A woman voting for Donald Trump is like a deer voting for more hunting season. Now, I came up with that a few minutes ago, but it brings the point home. One of the primary goals of MAGA is to strip the rights away from women all across the country, and a lot of Republican women now vote against their own interests. This article is titled, "Trump's GOP is no country for MAGA women," and it explains how the RNC was not a friendly environment for even the most popular women in the MAGA movement. At the Republican National Convention, MAGA women learned there's no place for them in Trump's GOP. Milwaukee, on the third night of the Republican National Convention, Donald Trump's WWE-inspired entrance came complete with a trollish musical cue, James Brown's infamous ode to traditional gender hierarchies, quote, "It's a man's world." Earlier that day, Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia learned the song's lesson the hard way. The once soaring MAGA star was facing down a painfully small crowd at the signing of her book, MTG. What a terrible name, way too on the nose. Just before the trollish congresswoman was scheduled to arrive, a group of red-clad workers busied themselves with building big stacks of Greene's hardcover published in November 2023. But only a few American flag festooned folks had lined up an hour later. Greene still hadn't arrived, but the crowd hadn't gotten much bigger. With fewer than 20 people waiting when she finally rolled in at 3 p.m., Greene took one look at the underwhelming crowd, muttered something to her entourage, then quickly hid in a nearby room. It seems like Marjorie Taylor Greene was waiting for the crowd to grow, but it just never did. One could almost feel bad for her if she wasn't the worst person on the planet. Leave a like on the video and comment a blue heart if you just don't feel bad for her. Some people were milling around, but they were mostly journalists and photographers. After all, Greene is still an attraction for mainstream and liberal media outlets whose readers enjoy hating her. The weak turnout of actual conservative consumers, however, suggests Greene's purported fan base has cooled its ardor. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a cool spectacle online for a lot of people. Hey, look, it's the lady who says crazy stuff about Jewish space lasers, but nobody finds actual political utility. Nobody actually wants to hear her talk about her book. Eventually, some attendees did swing by, curious about what had drawn the press. This added enough people to pull Greene out of hiding. Still, as we left, we spied a volunteer in a red shirt offering people free copies as bait to draw them to Greene's table. So the people writing this article were at the RNC. They're writing about their first-hand experience, and this guy was trying to bait people over to the table. It's possible, of course, that Greene had personally worn out her welcome with the MAGA crowd. Her trolling isn't triggering the liberals like it used to. Her alliance with the ousted House Speaker Kevin McCarthy of California tarnished her MAGA credentials. Remember, Kevin McCarthy keeps saying that Matt Gaetz was a pedophile. I just wanted to throw that in there. While sales figures for her book aren't public, Greene's mandatory financial disclosures as a member of Congress suggest copies sit dusty on bookstore shelves. Again, Greene's mandatory financial disclosures show that she's not selling many books. She did have a speaking role on the main stage at the RNC, but they shunted her to Monday night, the holding dock for the figures the party least wished to highlight. Again, I just want to bring the point home. It is a rough world for women in the MAGA movement. Not only are they voting to strip their rights away, but in the process, they aren't even respected by other men. The story continues. This is only the tip of the iceberg. After 4 days at the RNC, I suspect a major source of her woes was something darker. The GOP, already the party of sexism, is getting more gratuitous with its toxic masculinity. Everywhere one looked at the convention, Republicans were exalting maleness with an ardor that reads as, quote, defensive to outsiders, but appears to be a convincing display to those inside the MAGA cult. The overcompensation led to a grand finale featuring both pro wrestler Hulk Hogan ripping his shirt apart and Ultimate Fighting Championship president Dana White, UFC president. Rather than the traditional activist and politician one hears at a convention, they are trying to exude this vibe of toxic masculinity, with Hulk Hogan just going crazy on stage. Hogan declared Trump a gladiator, which should be funny applied to a doughy senior citizen caked in orange makeup, but appears to have been taken at face value by the RNC crowd. Along with the James Brown song, Trump used Macho Man by the Village People as intro music, still indifferent to the irony of the song. The boys club vibe spread throughout the convention. Women were welcome, but only as support staff. A few years ago, female provocateurs like Greene were riding high, feeling like they could troll their way into MAGA stardom like their male counterparts. The message being sent at the GOP's 2024 convention: it's time for the gals to take a back seat. And this is manifesting in very real ways for people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, people like Kari Lake, people like Lauren Boebert. At the convention, they can feel the toxic masculinity according to these reports. It continues. Kari Lake, the current GOP Senate candidate for Arizona and failed gubernatorial candidate, did not have a good convention, and she doesn't deserve it. She spread so many lies about election fraud. She ruined people's lives. Her speech was early in the evening on Tuesday and poorly attended. Lake, a former newscaster, is not getting the juice she seemed to think would be hers if she rebranded as a MAGA loudmouth. It worked for a bit. It shoots them to MAGA stardom for a bit after they troll, but then it fizzles out very quickly because, again, they don't offer any real substance when it comes to politics. She did her best, dropping the Sarah Palin-associated phrase "mama bear" liberally throughout her speech. She even tried to rile up the crowd by yelling "fake news" at the media section. The 2-minute hate fell flat. There were only a handful of reporters even sitting in the press section. Even Fox News declined to air her speech. On Thursday, Lake had her book signing next to ones held by Donald Trump Jr. and former Trump aide Peter Navarro, recently released from prison. Peter Navarro gave a speech the same day he got out of prison. The two men were greeted like rock stars, with attendees happily waiting over an hour to meet their MAGA heroes. A few people did buy books from Kari Lake, but her paltry lines stood out even more next to those of her male counterparts. Plenty of female speakers had a better reception, but only when they were playing the role of cheerleader for real MAGA leaders, men. Kellyanne Conway, who once seemed to believe being a Trump spokeswoman was a launching pad for herself, was a sad sight. She praised Trump's history of, quote, promoting women to a crowd that could not care less. The message had an unintended irony. Conway once enjoyed a reputation on Capitol Hill as a trusted political consultant, but the way she beclowned herself as Trump's spokesperson, remember alternative facts, has rendered her a joke, even to Trump's loyal supporters. The Republican convention is just making it totally explicit that the project of Trumpism is centrally about masculinity. Jackson Katz, who researches the tropes of masculinity, told 19th News. As Mel Leonard Barclay writes, it's, quote, key to a Trump victory because, quote, Trump has a significant advantage among men, 27 points in a New York Times Siena College survey of registered voters that surpasses Biden's advantage among women. The crowd at the RNC certainly reflected this. While attendance was far lower than in the past, 27,000 people came this year compared to the reported 45,000 in 2016, the convention also appeared to have more young people than 8 years ago. But it was mostly young men, not women. Everywhere one looked at the Milwaukee RNC, packs of men in their 20s and 30s roamed around, often in tailored suits instead of the khakis and polo shirts preferred by their older brethren. But the dandified fashion of the young, would-be fascists should not fool anyone. The key to attracting all these young men is a deeply misogynist message. Feminists deprive them of their right to dominate, and only through Trump can they regain the glorious patriarchal past. The ironic result is that the avowedly anti-feminist would-be female leaders of the GOP now go ignored. Concerned Women for America has long been a Republican powerhouse central to organizing the Christian right, but no matter how loud their microphones were, they couldn't attract attendees for public prayer sessions. The only people watching as the Concerned Women prayed were journalists. So it is a rough world in the MAGA movement for women, but it is a world they helped foster themselves. Leave a like on the video, comment a blue heart, hit that subscribe button if you don't feel bad for the environment that MAGA women helped create, and make sure you have a great day yourself.